actively managing safety recalls brings the rate down, the open rate down. And guess what? That's more money. It's more profit. And if I'm really professionally managing it, I'm catching them at acquisition. If it's in brand, got a remedy, I can offer touch more because I'm going to make money. If it's off brand, got to stop sale. I'm in Tennessee. I can't sell it. I'll give you $1 for it. So it's that insight, that's information, the business intelligence that you get through a professionally managed system. So you can tell I'm passionate about this. But, the major point here, dealers are missing recalls and they don't know it. And that has financial and liability impacts.
Welcome to Your Place, the virtual chat show from Rapid Recon, where we talk about retail industry trends and news. Hello, I'm Jim Leman, Senior Director of Communications for the vehicle reconditioning and communications company, Rapid Recon. Today on Your Place, we'll discuss the results of a new consumer survey about transparency. Now wait, this is not the consumer survey you've ever heard before. This has entirely new information. So we're bringing this to you live today. For a typical Your Place, your host is Dennis McGinn, Rapid Recon founder and CEO. And we turn the tables on him today. I'm the host, along with our co-host. And our other guest is Mark Paul, who's the CEO of AutoAp, the automotive safety recall software company. And co-hosting with me is Mike DeVilling, who's the president of WestShore Public Relations. Mike knows this survey we're going to talk about probably better than anybody. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
You bet. Great to be here.
Thank you, Jim. Good to see you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why we did the survey in the first place. One of the things everybody knows is that transparency has become very important at the dealership level over the past several years. But that really comes down mostly to price and a little bit on vehicle history. But how do customers really feel about transparency and what else can they do? We wanted to understand and quantify just how important transparency is to car shoppers today. We also wanted to better understand how car shoppers feel about dealers in terms of overall trust, and also how they feel about dealers compared to other forms of automotive retailing technology. And finally, we wanted to look at specific technologies that AutoApp and Rapid Recon can deploy in the marketplace to help bolster car shopper attitudes about dealership transparency and to help dealers be more transparent and create better relationships with their customers. So we went out and talked to 1,000 people who would possibly be in the market for a car over the next 3 years. We talked to people with every age, every income, and every geography all over the country. And we found consumers across the board really value transparency quite highly. In fact, it scored a 92 out of a possible 100. And as Mark and Dennis will both tell you in more detail, there's a lot of opportunities in the marketplace for dealers to create better customer relationships using technologies like those that Rapid Recon and AutoApp bring to the market. So we'll be talking about all of those things a little bit. I wanted to start with Mark. Mark, what stood out to you when you looked at these survey results?
Well, there's 5 things that really stood out. First is trust is very important to nearly every customer that comes through the dealership, and it comes through dealership transparency. 2, although dealerships scored an 80% level on consumer trust, some consumers remain wary, so dealers must continue to earn trust every day. Feeling safe is a critical factor for consumer choice. Consumers mention safety 5 times more than any other issue. Comments like "my family safety is everything to me" point to this. Number 4 is consumers are very aware of the sheer number of safety recalls and trust that dealers will be honest with them. If they aren't, it can ruin previously positive customer relationships, completely undermine trust, and cost dealers future sales, service business, and referrals. And 5th, consumers favor dealers who manage recalls 15 to 1 in service and 24 to 1 in sales over those who don't.
Thanks, Mark. Dennis, we're going to ping pong this to you. Used car buyers don't typically pay much attention to how a vehicle is reconditioned, which is part of the process of getting a used car ready to be retailed again. But should they be paying more attention to this? Should consumers be more concerned about how their used cars are reconditioned by the dealer they buy it from?
I think that's happening on its own, but we're going to help accelerate that because today's buyers are paying premiums for their cars and they know it. So that means they're going to look more into the details of things like reconditioning, and they're going to keep them longer than they had planned, again, because they know they're paying premiums. And they also know that the cars are lasting longer. They have a more higher useful life. So I think the reconditioning, of which recalls are certainly part of that process, is really important. And the dealers haven't been particularly good at getting this information in front of customers in a way that gets them excited. So I think there's a huge opportunity here, and there's a big hole that we're going to help address.
And Dennis, thanks for that. You mentioned recalls in there as being an important part of this. Mark, most consumers probably don't even realize what the industry's challenges are when it comes to recalls and managing their safety recalls. Can you tell us a little bit more about the big picture challenges in the industry?
Yeah, well, they've certainly heard about the Takata airbags, and somebody else just died a couple weeks ago because of that. There's ample news about recalls. What they don't know, and quite frankly, most dealers don't know, is that safety recall ecosystem's broken. Yeah, recalls are getting repaired at record rate, but they're also being issued at record rates. So what do I mean by broken? Errors and delays in the recall data, with even the most diligent dealer can't possibly create all the IT systems required to know the exact safety recall status of 100% of their inventory due to these errors and delays, or when they acquire a vehicle. And most dealers are unaware of this issue and think they are covered. They're decidedly not. So you've got a situation where consumers expect dealers to be on top of it, and it's difficult at best. However, we know dealers are missing recalls, putting consumers at risk and increasing their own liability. Some think they're covered with the OEM taking responsibility, but a recent dealer group just got fined $10 million for selling vehicles with open recalls without disclosing them. And so trust comes from transparency.
So we all know that dealers need to take care of this problem. How do car shoppers feel about recall transparency at the dealership level?
Well, we pose some questions to consumers to consider shopping at two dealerships, one who manages safety recalls well and one who doesn't. And what does that mean? So dealership A has a recall management policy, really important, manages recalls professionally with a third-party vendor. That's all their job. Always discloses recalls, never sells vehicles with stop sale recalls, and can intelligently answer questions about safety recalls for their own brand as well as off-brand. We found a significant schism. There's a clear differentiation between dealerships who provide a professional, automated safety recall system and those who don't. Consumer respondents heavily favored dealership A's approach to safety recall management in terms of purchase preference, 96% to 4%, service visits, 94 to 6%, and referrals, 95% to 5%. So it's pretty clear to me that professionally managing safety recalls is a competitive differentiator in this tight marketplace that's coming down our way.
Thanks, Mark. Dennis, back to you. You've been on this transparency drumbeat, particularly the recon transparency drumbeat, for quite a few years. How do you quantify what this means? What does this recon report look at, and what does it mean to a consumer?
So I think we've moved from one early thing of transparency, which again is something the dealers haven't been particularly comfortable with, actually, even trusting their own people to communicate all the right information, and to a point where now it has to be executed proactively because we're talking about the life cycle of a customer now and not just the life cycle of a car. So we're building that trust through the transparency right up front. And so I think it is essential. It's part and parcel to just having a customer that is relying on you for adequate or for correct information. I mean, Takata and the airbag thing has taken it to a new level because we're talking about life and death, and so there's a lot people are it has their attention, but getting them the right information along with everything else. I mean, one of the things that we did to this car to get the ready for prime time and for you to not only be able to see, but you to be able to feel comfortable putting a bunch of money into and letting your family drive it. So I think that the whole transparency process is accelerating in my world, and so I think it's no longer just a nice to have. I think you if you want to have customers that are going to be lifetime customers, you better have that transparency working for you in the right way. Reconditioning and recalls are absolutely part and partial to that now.
Dennis, we've established that it's important to dealerships, it's important to customers. What are some very specific action steps that dealers can take to increase consumer trust at the dealership level?
They should go through the reconditioning, and we're starting to put this out on the website on customer facing through various pieces of technology. You know, during the reconditioning process, our customers use Rapid Recon to make the decisions on what they're going to invest in the car, brakes and tires, and the basic safety inspections and things like that. Those things need to be communicated to the customers. And in fact, if some dealers go to the extent of making sure if there's an open safety recall, for instance, on a car, that the customer signs off on it. They give them the repairer information showing it was resolved, and they get to put their John Hancock, and that helps. I mean, I think that helps move it along. But I think there could be a lot more proactive use of this transparency idea. So making sure that they go through that, not just the features. I mean, you can go through all the features and the gadgets and the technology and the downloadable software and things like that now for your vehicles. But I think the whole reconditioning is part of now, I think, the upfront decision. Why am I paying so much for this car? How long am I going to keep it? And what things have you done to help me make a decision? And even to the point of, okay, so is there something that you'd like to do to have done to this car we haven't done? So I think that's the next phase.
Dennis, what on this recon report is different from the thing that most consumers are more familiar with, such as a Carfax report or a vehicle history report? Don't those include aspects that are on the recon report, or are they totally different reports?
No, I mean, they don't. I mean, I like to talk about a parallel between reconditioning and Carfax. I mean, a Carfax is supposed to tell you if this car's had any damage or it's been in any kind of a flood or whatever it is. And it does a reasonable job of that. But I think there's a parallel to this, which are the recon facts, I say FACTS, of all the things that have done that on your watch to make this car safe and make it not just reliable, to provide all the things that go beyond that. So both mechanical and cosmetic, and it's all not visible. I mean, unless you put that out there and you explain it to your buyers of the things you've done, it isn't necessarily going to get communicated. And so if you don't do that, you miss an opportunity, I think, to add something of real value to the sales process, to quote the transparency idea.
Mark, from a recall perspective, what are some actions dealers can take to improve transparency there?
Well, there's 4 simple things that dealers can do. Is number one, have a written safety recall policy that everyone in the dealership reads and signs. Our other research with dealers last year shows that only 44% have them. Number 2 is assign a point person with the responsibility and authority to implement the policy. Number 3, avoid selling recalled vehicles and disclose recalls if that's not possible. And number four, implement an automated multi-source system to checks for recalls and verify acquisition, inventory, and post-sale. And that, coupled with the disclosure that Dennis was talking about, is extremely important, and in some states required by law. So automation reduces human error, and multi-source solutions provide much higher quality. So the results can be outstanding, which is what dealers are after: higher profits, additional revenue, reduced liability, improved compliance. And when it comes to consumers, you're building trust through transparency.
Mark, I know one of the things we've talked about a lot is the high percentage of vehicles that are on the road or on a dealer's lot that might have an open recall, and how consumers don't necessarily know that. And you've talked a lot about how dealers that really implement your system bring that down, and you talk about them as your power users. Can you talk a little bit about how much the power users who follow your system improve what they do?
Yeah, of course, we'd love to do that. We're data driven, and whenever we onboard a client, whether it's a rental car company, a fleet, um, independent dealer, or franchise dealers, who are most of our clients, we keep track of their open rates. So if I've got 100 vehicles and 20 of them have an open recall, it's a 20% open rate. Independent, and then out in the wild. So out in the wild, sort of 20 to 25% open rate. Independent dealers have a 20% open rate when we first onboard them. Franchise dealers have a 15% open rate. So if I got 100 vehicles, or I got 200 vehicles, maybe when the inventory comes back in, I got 30 with an open safety recalls. And our power users, and the important point here is they have a policy, but you don't need to buy anything with that. And we've got a template. We'd be glad to get a template to you if you check in on our website. But the policy, a point person, again, you don't need technology to do that. Just, those are simple things to do. And then get an automated multi-source system and pay attention and disclose recalls. Those who are actively managing safety recalls have gotten that down about 83%, down to about 2.5% open rate. So you're seeing an average between 15 and 20% franchise and independents, at about 17% or so on a weighted average. Get that down to about 2.5% or less if they're actively managing recalls. That tells us, number one, dealers are missing recalls. Otherwise, when we first onboard them, the rate would be down around 2.5%. And the 2.5% probably don't have remedies or parts. So, professionally managed, actively managing safety recalls brings the rate down, the open rate down. And guess what? That's more money. It's more profit. And if I'm really professionally managing it, I'm catching them at acquisition. If it's in brand, got a remedy, I can offer touch more because I'm going to make money. If it's off brand, got a stop sale, I'm in Tennessee, I can't sell it. I'll give you $1 for it. So it's that insight, that information, the business intelligence that you get through a professionally managed system. So you can tell I'm passionate about this. But, the major point here, dealers are missing recalls and they don't know it. And that has financial and liability impacts.
I think one of the things that came out of the survey too was what can happen if a dealer lets a vehicle with an open recall through that goes to a customer. And the customers that responded to this said that would be a deal killer with the relationship with that particular dealership. No more future sales, no more future service, no more referrals. And so that's one of the things that is very important for those dealerships to manage. And that came through loud and clear in the survey as well.
And it's not just, gee, I got hurt because of the safety recall. I just found out about the safety recall and you didn't tell us.
Right.
That's really important. And there's all kinds of sources out there. A lot of them flawed, most of them flawed, delayed, and so on. But if they find out, then that's a reflection, a bad reflection on the dealer. So just trust comes through transparency.
That's great. I had one other quick question for Dennis. One of the things that we've talked about in the past is a kind of a visual at the dealership of a representation of the recon process, or that you've referred to as the recon seal of approval. Do you see that as a tool that can help dealers show their customers that they've really gone the extra mile on these vehicles?
Yeah, I think it's something we've been thinking about for a while. So now we're going to use it. Just the the Rapid Recon logo as a medallion thing, I mean, people know it. They become comfortable with it. They feel like this is their process, and it kind of tells them that everything was done and it was done correctly. So, yeah, I think that seal of approval is going to become important. And so we're going to push that whole thing forward. Just, it's kind of like the good housekeeping thing, except it kind of goes deeper into your psyche in terms of safety and completeness, in terms of value. So, yes, part and parcel to, I think, our transparency agenda.
Thanks,
That's
Dennis.
good.
I've got one final comment here to kind of wrap this up, I hope. In both aspects of this survey, for both Rapid Recon and AutoApp, in terms of what does it mean to the ultimate consumer, and by promoting greater transparency into the safety recall aspects of the vehicle, as that been taken care of, and the reconditioning in terms of what was done to this used car. When we talk about transparency, consumers, the more they know of these things, when they look at a dealership, the more it does two important things for them. It builds their trust in the integrity of the dealership that they're shopping. And then for the used vehicle that they're looking at, it builds value in that used vehicle for the consumer. That's important to them. And I think it's also, when we take a look at what the ultimate purpose of a car dealership is to sell and service vehicles. And if I'm able to differentiate my store by showing to the consumers that my vehicles, through these efforts of recall management and reconditioning management, enhance or increase the value of that car. No one wants to buy a used car off the lot and next week need tires or shocks or brakes for it or face a recall. So there are real important advantages for car dealers to take a look at as they continue to work on this goal of making their business more transparent to consumers. That's my final thought. Anyone have any last thing they want to do before I close this issue of your place?
I really hope that our listeners and our customers are kind of out there taking all this in, giving us feedback and things. I mean, this industry is moving faster all the time. Margin compression's back. This is a big thing to pay attention to, the value added and reconditioning, and recall is part of that. So it's got to be better. It's got to be done better. The dealers need to make a bigger emphasis on using this transparency right up front and all the way through the process. So the customers are not only coming back, but they're asking you for advice, and you're trying to build a customer for life. So
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
now, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.